the nicest guys in the industry, my next guest bartender, Jesse Estes.
Thanks, Richard.
How are you? You good?
Very well.
Yeah. Good. Have a seat.
Thank you.
So, how are you?
I'm doing very well.
It was pretty difficult to get hold of you. Like we tried to book this 2 months ago, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I think 2 months ago you gave me 3 dates.
Yeah.
One was last Sunday, one
Yep.
was a random Tuesday, and then there was today.
Yep.
So, what have you been up to? What are you up to at the moment?
Been traveling, so I work with this wonderful brand, Tequila Ocho, that you all know here already, that we'll be tasting later today. And the brand is, touch wood, is just taking off, and basically I'm just trying to catch up with the brand. So I've been in Holland last week, I think, Portugal the week before, and then 8 different cities in Asia the month before that. So
And that's all to do with Ocho?
that's all to do with Ocho.
You get to go to any cool bars? Anything good out in Holland?
So many good bars, and Holland's had some great bars for a long time, but I think it's having another wave of really great bars opening. Even
Favorite
last
bars?
Year. In Holland, it's probably too many to name, but the Taylor is one of the new very cool bars I've been to. The Taylor, Tales and Spirits, of course, is amazing. Flying Dutchman is very fun but very dangerous. I think I was there till 4 or 5 a.m.
Yeah, so I went to Tales and Spirits for New Year's Eve.
Ah, nice.
2 years ago now, and that was an incredible New Year's Eve in Amsterdam. My previous experience in Amsterdam was a brand trip.
Okay.
And it basically ended up on the first night. Everyone was very excited. We went to the distillery in the morning. There was a couple of bottles on the bus on the way back from the distillery. Then we went out to a couple of bars, and basically someone got lost. They lost their phone. They couldn't remember what hotel they were in. So they basically checked themselves into another hotel, stayed the night there. Meanwhile, the brand rep is tearing his hair out, and it wasn't until about 5 o'clock the next day, because the guy had lost his phone, he had to call the bar that he was working in England to try and get the phone number of this guy. And it wasn't until about 5 o'clock that everyone was reunited, and you know that's going to be on your record.
And what were you guys thinking? You were just thinking this guy's
an
missing,
idiot.
or
Well, some people had sympathy.
Yeah.
Some people were just like, you were drinking like straight vodka at 11 in the morning, and then trying to down shots on the bus on the way back. You're a moron. What are you doing? Whereas a couple of us were like,
it should have been tequila. Then he would have been
it
fine.
should have been tequila.
Yeah.
So yeah, my experience of Amsterdam, especially. Was there anywhere else in Holland you went?
This trip was just Amsterdam. Yeah.
Okay. And whereabouts in Asia?
Let's see, Singapore, Hong Kong, 2 different cities in
Singapore's
Malaysia.
having a bit of a.
Singapore is like the London of Asia,
Right.
in my point of view. I mean, there's just some of the most amazing cocktail bars there. I mean, you guys all know, you're very familiar with the world's 50 best. I think this last year they had 6 out of 50 were in Singapore, and I think London had 8, New York had 7. So I think it's quite indicative that those guys are doing
Favorite bar in Singapore?
very cool things.
Is...
If I had to pick one, I'd think Manhattan for the team and the drinks. For the actual physical place and the team and the drinks as well, Atlas is just one of the most stunning places.
David Cordoba?
David, I think David was doing Proof, so Proof helped set up both of those bars that I just mentioned. But I think David is back in Europe somewhere. I don't know what he's doing.
Okay. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, because it's probably quite well known, is family. You know, the tequila family, my family, your family. So my family are very much involved in this beautiful liquid that we all enjoy. My dad used to brew his own beer. My mum used to, she kind of made her own schnapps / wine / something. My uncle owned a couple of pubs. My granddad taught my dad how to brew beer. So booze in my family is, it's part.
It's in your blood.
It's in my blood, my DNA, my part of my upbringing, and I think, family really does shape, children, if you like, growing up. So your dad does something.
My dad has a little brand called Ocho, and prior to that, and still now, he is the official tequila ambassador for the European Union. So,
So that's a pretty big deal.
It's a big deal for us, yeah.
So what was growing up like, surrounded by that that infamy, that spirit, the liquid? What was that like?
To me, actually, much before tequila, I was exposed to wine. So
Okay.
my dad and uncle, even more so with my uncle, have been absolute lovers of Burgundy wine in general, but Burgundy specifically. So I grew up, my uncle's now been going for 30, probably almost 35 consecutive years to the en primeur tastings in Burgundy. So every year he goes, and growing up, because I grew up just outside of Paris, I would go with them, even as a kid, tasting wine. So I was exposed to wine at a very early age, and then it wasn't until I was a teenager that I started getting into tequila.
So my first experience with tequila wasn't very good. I can just remember, and I'm not going to brand call, obviously, but it was drinking it neat,
Yeah.
salt, lime,
Yeah.
with some school friends, and I was a bit of a mess.
I think probably, well, let's see, how many of us here have had that experience at some point in their lives? Not Dave? Yeah, all of us here have had that experience.
So growing up around tequila, I mean, you must have tasted some incredible tequilas, right?
Yeah, and I was exposed to, some great tequilas at an early age, which I think most people, again, the first experience we all tend to have is with less good quality tequila, which makes us feel
A bit of an
hungover or
aversion
sick,
to tequila.
Yeah, and then it's hard to get back on that horse, isn't it? But so I was exposed to some really great tequilas growing
Favorites?
up. Growing up, actually, funny enough, when I was like 15, 16, my favorite was Gran Centenario Plata, which was a really, I think, price
Wait, how old?
accessible. I was of legal drinking age for the camera.
15, 16. Wow, okay. I mean, I don't think I was exposed to that until I was at least mid-20s. So
Right.
my tequila
Yeah.
experience was down here when
Right.
I think you started up here.
Yeah, and again, I had the right person to
Of course.
to introduce
So,
me to that.
what's the best tequila you've had?
Ever?
Yeah.
To me, there's a few brands that are, Ocho is, I'm very biased, but it is obviously my favorite tequila. If it wasn't, then
There's no point in doing a job that you're
exactly.
only half-hearted in.
Okay.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me change that. What's the worst?
No, I can't
Come
do that.
on.
Not on camera. If the
Okay,
camera
fine.
goes off, we
Fine.
can do it.
So Q&A at the end, off camera. we'll find
Once
out.
the camera goes off, we'll do the uncensored questions.
Cool. Okay, so you're now an author. We've got a book. This is it. Tequila Beyond Sunrise. How did that all start?
That all started through Tristan Stevenson, who we all know here, a very, very busy man these days, author, bar owner, consultant, really great guy. So his publisher, the same publisher he did the Curious Bartender and all the books he's done with, wanted to do a small consumer oriented book on tequila cocktails. So he very kindly recommended me, and then a few
And then
months
this is the
later,
final-
this is
The final
this
product.
is the result. Yeah.
So you went from bartending to ambassador, globally, author, in that kind of realm. I mean, was that just a natural, organic progression, or was that something that you intended, one day I'm going to be part of this beautiful brand?
No, I think it was totally organic, and finishing high school in the U.S. At 17, 18, I had no idea what I was going to do, and I think it was going shortly after I graduated high school, going to Julio Bermejo's wedding in 2006. Everybody knows Julio here, right? The Tommy's Margarita, great guy. And I think he had something like 800 or 900 people at his wedding, most of them bar industry or somehow related to the bar industry. And that's when I met Dre Masso for the first time, Henry Besant, Charles Vexenat, and those are the guys who later would get me into the London bar scene. And so that was the beginning for it for me, just seeing how much fun it was. I went to Henry's wedding the next year, and rest in peace, Henry. But then I met literally the whole London bar scene. I think went to Greece for his wedding, and I just fell in love with the people and coming over here and seeing the bars. And
Because you worked at Callooh Callay for 2 years,
a little less than 2 years.
2012
2010,
to
2011.
11. Yeah, and you would have been part of the team that won the beautiful place
Yes.
upstairs. Yeah.
Amazing
So-
team as you have now, but then
Yeah.
for me it was a very special team because Callooh was always my favorite bar before working there. So I got the call from Andrea and I was like, really? Are you sure you want me to come work with you? So that was, to me, was a dream come true. And actually, you know, working in the industry after that, I think I was always trying to recreate that experience, which just wasn't possible that I had here. So yeah, it was a very special place to work.
And then full time on to Ocho with a little bit of free time to write the book.
Yeah, in between I was actually helping, so we opened another bar called El Nivel, which specialized in agave spirits, which was very cool. Unfortunately, we sold the lease to the whole building. They had La Perla, which was there for 20 years. So that's gone now, but so I had that in between, and I've been full-time with Ocho now for 1.5 years.
So shall we open up a bottle?
Yeah, so I've actually got something pretty special because I know Callooh opened in 2008.
Yes.
Ocho
November.
launched officially in 2008, so November. Our official birthday is August 8th, 2018, so not so far from November. So I have actually, it's totally falling apart, you can see here, but I have the first ever batch of Ocho, which was called, the field was called La Rivera, so Ocho is a single field produced tequila. So I'll let you guys just pass this around.
So what's the difference between this tequila and the stuff that's being produced now?
The only difference really, so the production processes stay the same. The only difference is that each batch of Ocho will come from one different single field. So the one we have now, the one you guys have in the bar now, is called Las Águilas, which means the eagles, because there's a lot of eagles nesting in the trees in that area. Las Águilas, which you can see on our map, is not so far from the distillery, a little bit south of the distillery, whereas La Rivera, which is the first one we're tasting now, the first ever batch of Ocho we produced, is quite far south. It's around 70 kilometers south of there. Very different terroir. So what changes is the soil composition, the elevation, the microclimate, the microbiology in some cases, and that will have an effect on the tequila. Actually, we can do that now. You can actually, there's 2 tasting glasses for every person, so you can pour this one in the other glass. This is, as you can see, is a black bottle. Same production process. We just did a black bottle for Day of the Dead. Limited edition, just for fun.
So this is the same liquid, or this is the newer version of the same tequila?
Production process.
Yeah.
The only thing
Different
that changes, different single fields. So
right.
I think everyone will be able to tell pretty well the difference in taste between these two.
What do you guys think?
It's really peppery.
Peppery.
It smells like what, sorry? Prunes.
Prunes, I get that, definitely. Olivey, nice. You've
So-
been reading the tasting notes online.
Jeff, you've done some research before a tasting. I like it.
Good palate, or good nose rather. Actually, if anyone doesn't smell the olive, you can do a little experiment. You can dip your finger into the tequila, rub it on the back of your other hand.
Surely that's a waste of good tequila.
It's a drop. It's a drop. We'll say it's for the gods.
Okay. And what does this prove?
So one thing it proves is they do this in mezcal. If your hand is sticky afterwards, there's probably been something added, glycerin, sugar,
yeah.
caramel. So hopefully your hand is not sticky. But go ahead and smell it. And again, to me, I get exactly what you were talking about. It's going to bring out certain smells. I get that olive, brine, that almost like tapenade, and the plum as well, the prune.
Yeah, pine.
Pine as well, yeah, definitely. This is totally unaged, so it's not from the wood, but pine will naturally be found in agave as well.
So this is the first batch, right?
That was the first ever batch of Ocho produced, yeah, a little over 10 years ago.
Do you think it's aged in the bottle? Anywhere?
You know, I do actually. I think, you know, this is an unopened
The
bottle.
colour is a little bit different to that.
I think it's actually the glass, because it's been kept in a cellar. Yeah, I think it's the glass that's actually.
It is a bit more like.
But look at the color in your
Yeah.
glass. It should be
Yeah.
crystalline still. Right on the nose, right away you can tell a massive difference, right? The second one is really buttery.
It's, I was going to say softer, creamier, but yeah.
Definitely creamier.
And why would that be?
Again, production process stays pretty much the same, so it's just the different
In what, soil,
soil,
size
yeah.
of agave, crop
Everything.
yield?
everything.
So do you produce a vintage, or is it a
Yeah.
blend, or?
So it's every bottle has the name of the field that the agaves were harvested from and the year of harvest on the back. The year of harvest is more of just a reference. It's not really to do with vintages like wine, because wine the weather in the last year will have such a big impact on the final product, whereas these plants take on average 8 years to grow. So we're not really looking at the last year. If anything, we're looking at the last 8 years of weather conditions.
And how big do these agaves grow?
I mean, even though they're planted at the same time, and even though this is essentially a monoculture, so almost every plant in the species is pretty much genetically identical or very little genetic diversity. But with that said, they all mature at a different rate, and they can all be different sizes and all different sugar contents. So they can be anywhere from something like 10 kilos, which would be quite small, and I've seen plants up to 120 kilos. So they can be enormous.
How do you harvest a 120 kilo agave plant?
These guys don't mess around. The jimadores are really hard workers. It's very skilled work. And obviously, in most cases, with one that size, you would cut it down in half or quarter just to help move it.
In the field?
In the field,
right.
Yeah. So the next one we can taste is actually, if you keep the black bottle in your glass, and then we can try, this is the current field, 2017.
And is there a certain time of year that you have to harvest these? Are there rules to the terroir or
not so
appellation
much,
or
not so
anything like
much
that?
rules, it's more just from a practical standpoint. So you can harvest any time of year. The one time that producers tend not to harvest is during the rainy season.
Which is?
Tends to be June to September.
Right.
So that's changing now with climate change or global warming, whatever we want to call it.
Depending on your standpoint, whether it actually is climate change or just a freak adversity.
I've heard that does not exist. It's not a real thing. It's fake news. But what we do know is that it's changing a bit now, which we don't know what effect that'll have on not just agave but other crops.
So it could have a good effect.
It could.
And if you have a rainy season, if you have a short rainy season, is that better for the harvest like it would be for grapes, or is that worse for the harvest?
Again, a short rainy season actually wouldn't be that detrimental to the agave because it's something that strives under stress. So this plant can go incredibly long amounts of time without water, without a drop of water. And actually, the more it has an inhospitable growing condition, living condition, the more it's stressed, the more sugar content it creates, and the more complexity in the final product.
And the more intense flavor it produces, right?
Usually. In general. These are all generalities. This is the 2017, so it was harvested last year, but it's the current vintage that we have here in the UK. And again, I think it's still quite different, but I think you'll find it more similar to the black bottle, which was 2016.
Is it the same field as the black bottle?
No, all three are different fields. So the first was La Rivera, the second was Puerta del Aire, and the third was Las Águilas, which means the eagles.
Can anyone notice any significant differences?
This one's again on the lighter side again.
Somewhere between the two almost.
Yeah.
Elements of both.
It's not as
Still
creamy.
watery on the palate. Or more citrusy.
Still creamy, but definitely less than the black one, right?
And still this hasn't seen any aging at all.
No, everything we've tried so far is totally unaged. The next one is very lightly aged that we'll try. And then the Reposado is just very lightly aged. This is aged 64 days. Basically, we age all of our tequilas the legal minimum. In the case of Reposado, it's 60 days. Why do we do 64 days? Well, we're a little bit obsessed with the number 8. So 64 is 8 squared, 8 weeks, 8 days, 8 times 8. So we just like to have a bit of fun. But basically, it's minimum aged. The full name for Ocho is actually, if you look at the bottles, it says Muestra Número Ocho, which means sample number 8. And Carlos is the master distiller. I would say, both subjectively, but also objectively, I would say he's the best master distiller in Mexico, certainly the most respected and awarded master distiller in Mexico. He's 5th generation tequila producer, and I think 6th or 7th generation agave grower. His great-grandfather, I think great or great-great-grandfather, was credited in the mid-80s, when I say 80s, mid-1880s, with bringing some of the first agave from Tequila Valley to the highlands. So prior to that, the highlands had no blue agave, which is quite interesting. Now it's one of the major areas of blue agave production. Carlos and my dad got to know each other very well over the years. Carlos is actually the one who approached my dad years ago to create a brand together. My dad said, there's two things I want to achieve, Carlos. One is to highlight the agave flavor, to highlight the flavor of the raw material itself as much as possible. And Carlos said, yep, I have a lot of ideas of how I'm going to do that from a production standpoint. And the second thing he said is, could we do this single field concept? And Carlos said, well, logistically it's possible because we have enough fields, and his family own all of their own fields. Again, family business, which is great for us. And he said, but Tomas, be careful. My dad said, be careful of what? He said, if we do this single field production, like a single vineyard wine, each batch will taste a little bit different. And my dad said, that's exactly what I want. So it was kind of a fusion between this Burgundy, single vineyard concept and tequila. So it started off in a way as an experiment to see if and to what extent terroir existed in tequila.
So presumably then there is always a limited batch production. Very, very smart.
So the first one we tasted, La Rivera, which is the 2007, that was the year we harvested it, released in 2008. La Rivera has been sold, the field. So we'll never see that single field again. So it's especially rare.
And you open that bottle just for us?
Just for all of us here, of course, to celebrate 10 years. Well, almost 10 years. So back to the 8 is Carlos created all these different samples, what I call recipes, playing around with the age of the agave, the ways of cooking, the ways of milling, the ways of fermenting, distilling, and every time you change one of those variables, it'll change the final product. So he had all these different samples based on different recipes, and he and my dad did a blind tasting in separate rooms, and it became, both of them chose muestra número 8, sample number 8, of having the highest concentration of agave flavor. The name stuck, and then once we chose the name Ocho, we actually started to see the number 8 everywhere. 8 years on average to grow our blue agave to full maturity. 8 days between harvest and second distillation as Blanco tequila. 8 kilos on average within our production process to produce 1 liter of 40% ABV tequila. And then it goes, you can see in the booklet, it goes on and on and on from there. There's all 8s everywhere. 8s everywhere.
Right. So to wrap this up a little bit, what's next for you? Without that cliche interview, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time?
Yeah.
What's next for you?
Just to carry on with Ocho. I mean, it's so exciting to me, a brand like this that we started with no investment, and just, I think, really there's a magic around the brand that I think you guys might feel too, because you guys are the ones that, we don't have a sales and marketing team. Well, you're looking at the sales and marketing team. But we don't have a big team, and we don't have a lot of resources, but we do things with passion and care and integrity, and I think people have caught on to that, and also, of course, the taste and quality. And there's this magic around the brand that's just spread, and it's just very exciting to be a part of that.
Is there any market that you've not tapped into yet that you just think, I wish we could open up an Ocho outlet there?
To me, Asia is really exciting. It's because I see that it's still very nascent. It's still just the beginning days, but I could see a lot of potential in a lot of markets there. So
the retail aspect in Asia
as well.
The potential is insane. So
yeah, you look at China or something like that, right? It's
the digital retail side of
yeah.
things. Okay, we're going to do a Q&A just for you guys, so that will be off camera. So any secrets, you've all signed an NDA. So I think that's it. I really hope we get to do this again. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's been a real privilege to have you here. Please give a very warm round of applause to Jesse Estes.
Thank you, guys.